I had the luxury of playing in the Chicago Symphony. And I started there when I was 21. So for 8 years, I played fourth trumpet. Great, it's really fun. I only played on the big pieces. I moved over to second. And it didn't take long to figure out why so many people left that second chair. Chigwitz left with a bleeding ulcer. Rudy Nation got moved down and left the orchestra. They were really close friends. George Vosberg calls me the old man, still to this day, hated it every day. I quit the orchestra because of Bud Herseth. That's why it's an interesting question. I thought, I can do more things in my life because he'll probably outlive me. He didn't, but he sure played for a long time. He's from the old school. The old school was, just to give you an idea, when he came to the Chicago Symphony, he was, revered and worshipped. And they said, what can we give you? The next year they gave him double salary. The next year, he said, I need a new section. They replaced everybody in the section one at a time. The second guy was Rudy Nation. He came in on second, and he had been with Bud at New England Conservatory. The third guy, Bill Babcock, came in. He was also at New England Conservatory, and he was just, they got the job just because Herseth said, hire this guy, no auditions. Then when Schilke was fired, he had been fourth. Schilke's the only guy that played every part, every position in the Chicago Symphony. During the war, he was principal. But now he was fourth, and it was early 50s, 1950s, and he was fired also. And he went right to the union, which was not very supportive. It's a mafia in Chicago. It really was. But he went to the union and said, we have players here in Chicago. There should be an audition. It's the only fair way to do it. And the union made it happen. So they had an audition. It got down to two people. You probably have heard the names of them. Tom Crown, he was my second trumpet when I was in lyric opera. Guy that made mutes. He's still alive. And Vince Chickwitz, and Chickwitz won the job. And so there's been a lot of turnover. I'd say the biggest thing was Herseth was made to believe, all the principals were made to believe that they were like first lieutenants in the orchestra. They reported to the personnel manager and to the conductor of any things that weren't going right. So I'll give you an idea. Bill Babcock was third trumpet. In those days, you showed up for every rehearsal. There was no rehearsal order. Reiner, or whoever the music director was, could call any piece he wanted to. Something he's going to record in 3 weeks. And the librarian said, quick, have to get the music downstairs and pass it out. And that's what went up. So you showed up for every rehearsal and you stayed there. And they're up on stage. And that's what you did all the time. That was your job. You were there at every moment. So Bill Babcock, so when there was a concert for two trumpets, Bill Babcock and Chickwitz were third and fourth. Bill asked Vince if he would just check in that night because he was going to play a big band concert, a group that he'd always wanted to play, and he loved to play big bands. So Vince said, yeah, I can do it. I can check in, make sure they're okay, and I'll give you a call if there's any problem, but I'll cover for you. Well, you weren't supposed to do that. That wasn't in the union contract. That was a Herseth rule. I had a lot of Herseth rules when I got there. I checked in for rehearsals my first few years. Every rehearsal. I wasn't on that week. I checked in. That wasn't in the contract. So Bill, it became clear to Herseth that his third trumpet, who he got the job for, played a big dance job on Saturday night and didn't check in when they were playing an all Beethoven concert. Next Tuesday, rehearsal. One of the things Bill Babcock, he's still alive. One of the things, he's like 93, that he had struggled with, he was not a very delicate player. So strong player. So on Tuesday, beginning of the rehearsal, everybody's getting ready to play Schumann 2 or whatever. Reiner's up there picking his teeth. Wait, spit things out. La Mer, last movement. And this has been documented by so many people. So they started beginning. And then it just turned a page and two cornets. It's for 3 trumpets and 2 cornets. They didn't use the 3rd trumpet this day because they only carried 4. And the other guys are playing cornets. Bill Babcock's playing. And after the loud one, this is F sharp, G sharp, da, A sharp, loud. Then all of a sudden the orchestra goes ba da 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 da, all alone first cornet. Ba da ba, F sharp, all alone. It was the best he played it the first try. It was close. Reiner stopped. First cornet, why you play so loud? Did you ever hear stories about conductors like that? They were despots. The Zells, the Ormondys, Schulte wanted to be, but things changed. These people were not nice. And people were not. They didn't have tenure. They got fired. Some people turned alcoholics. Got to the point where they couldn't play at all. Reiner thought he needed to make people men. Herseth even said that. He made men of most of us. Well, the ones he didn't play anymore. Though that was the day. And so Herseth reported to Reiner, to the personnel manager, that Bill Babcock missed the concert. He was fired on Friday. He was fired. He didn't get his job back. He was fired. That's the way things went. One day, before I got in the orchestra, it was Rudy Nash playing second. Bill Babcock. No, I think Kaderabek was there then, playing third. And then Chigowitz. And they all showed up for the rehearsal, and the personnel manager walked up to the second guy and said, you're not, Rudy, you're not second trumpet anymore, you're 4th. If you don't like it, quit. It's unheard of today. You can't do that. You can't do that. And then he walked over to Chigowitz and said, you're now second trumpet player. If you don't like it, you can quit. So Rudy Nashin, about 6 weeks later, ran for vice president of the union, and then he had to leave the section because you can't hold a position in the union like that and play in one of those major orchestras. So he left the orchestra. And if you get a recording of Reiner's Concerto for Orchestra with Bartok, it's Rudy Nashin playing second. He was fabulous. But a funny thing happened. So I'm telling you some history of one orchestra. All the orchestras are like this. It wasn't go to work and have a good time with your friends. It was scary. And it came down from the conductor, which is unfortunate. So Herseth definitely was like a first lieutenant. He reported everything. And other principal players did the same thing. That was the game. That's what went on. And there are a lot of people. When Chigowitz died, well, there was a huge memorial thing in Kaderabek. Would not come, and he was 3rd trumpet. He wouldn't come because he knew Herseth would be there. Isn't that sad? So that's why I left. You know, music is so wonderful. It touches our souls. Why does that have to be like grade school and high school? Arrogance and playing all those power trips. It doesn't need to do that. So over the years, players that got older and older, like a Herseth, and a lot of players, they had to mellow because the contracts were changed. And players were protected. But still, those kind of games happen. So there's been a lot of evolution. So I got in Chicago Symphony in 1966. So that's 51 years ago. And I witnessed a lot of stuff. I saw a lot of changes. My audition was the first audition behind a screen in the United States. They were trying to be more fair. But they didn't do it perfectly. So when I walked out, there was somebody that said, the next applicant is principal trumpet and lyric opera. So they stopped doing that. And this was a private audition. This wasn't advertised. And I found out about it the day before because the principal percussionist, Gordon Peters, who was also a civic conductor, saw me coming back from playing a couple kiddie concerts at Northwestern. He said, hey, Charlie, you auditioning for the tomorrow? I said, for what? And so the other trumpet player and I got on the phone and we got a time, and so we auditioned. But there were only 10 people there. It was a private audition, 10 people. Charlie Schluter was there. What was his name? Rick Metzger followed Charlie as being principal in Milwaukee. It was open only to Chicago local members and Milwaukee members, and that was it. It was weird. It was just weird times. So after my audition, the next audition for Chicago Symphony was for cello. And a woman who was not a very good player, she was a below average player, Mary Jane Siegel, still remember her name. She walked out, and of course there wasn't any rug, nobody thought of that. She had high heels, there was a screen, they didn't announce her position, but she sued the orchestra and she won $10,000 for discrimination. So it was the start of orchestras being forced to be more fair and not just calling up an old buddy you went to college with, because that's the way it was when Herseth. Anybody know Herseth's audition story? It's pretty good. When he was in college, he went to Luther College in Iowa and studied math. He got a degree in math. He thought playing the trumpet was cheating, And then World War II started, and he was lucky. He got into a band, and he went overseas playing in the Navy, one of the Navy bands. During that time, he met enough people in the band that he decided he wanted to go to school and study trumpet more. And so he went to New England Conservatory and studied with Geyer. Geyer was also the teacher of Vacchiano, Voisin, Gattala. So Geyer was principal in the orchestra. It was a very French orchestra. And so Herseth finished his, I don't know how many years to get his master's, maybe only 2 years, and that's where he met Rudy Nashin and Bill Babcock. And he got married during that time, and he heard about the conductor of the Chicago Symphony, Rodzinski. And he had heard that he was going to be in Boston. Maybe conducting the orchestra as a guest, I don't know. But he called him up and set up an appointment to play for him in his hotel room. And Herseth plays for a long time in Rodzinski's hotel room. And Rodzinski says, I'm going to name you first trumpet of the Chicago Symphony. But I have to warn you, I've just been fired. So I'm not sure they're going to honor my recommendation. And Rodzinski only was in the Chicago Symphony as conductor 1 year, 47, 48. And the next 48 is when Herseth started. So Herseth gets on a train with his wife and one kid, they ended up having 3, goes to Chicago and hopes he gets a job. And they honored that contract. They didn't honor a lot of people that Rodzinski hired. So it's pretty interesting. He just played. Now, why did he play a Bach? Well, Geyer and all the people in the Boston Symphony played. Anybody know? What was the best? What?
Best.
Yeah, the best trumpet in the world. Piston was the French Besson. French Besson. Why do I say that? Because they sold to an English team company, and today you can buy an English Besson cornet, which is excellent. But Vincent Bach, when he came to the United States, he came with a case, and in the case was a French Besson B flat. His goal was to copy the Besson, Bach. So that was, I think, early 30s, maybe late 20s, something like that. Geyer became good friends with Bach, and Bach even played in the orchestra in Boston for a short period of time, maybe just filling in. So when Herseth gets the job, he calls up or he goes to see Geyer. He said, Professor, I've got principal in Chicago Symphony. And Geyer said, good, bravo. You know, you can't play a Besson there. That's a German orchestra. You can't do that. So I want you to go see my friend in Brooklyn, Vincent Bach. But before you do that, there's a Bach trumpet in our music library. You check that out and play it. John Hagstrom found the card that Herseth signed up, the library card, with his name on it, and dated right there, 1948. He's playing on the Bach trumpet. And he started his career in the Chicago Symphony playing that same instrument that belonged to the New England Conservatory library. So that's why he started playing Bachs. They were difficult to play, but you can imagine it put Bach on the map. When this young kid, he was 28 years old, 27 years old, comes into Chicago Symphony, and I've heard stories, and I've heard some early recordings of his playing. He stuck out, not like a sore thumb, like a god. It was incredible. You hear his Herseth in his first year. I heard that recording of it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And everybody was so stunned. You can see why they gave him double salary and did whatever he wanted. And he became a management man, for sure. And most of the principal players did because they got extra money. So in the early 60s, just a couple years before I got in the orchestra, and this is my last story, the tutti players, which is the majority of an orchestra, you're probably aware of that. If every section has one principal, all the other players are the tutti players. They all got scale. Nowadays, when I moved up to second trumpet, I got a raise. But it wasn't the case then. Everybody got basic salary, which was not much money. Most people had to pump gas, teach, conduct, do something else. Playing in an orchestra like that, you didn't make much money. And the seasons were like 32 weeks long, unless you got lucky and got to play at Ravinia. They were not 52-week seasons. So, let's see, where was I? So Herseth, so which part was I trying to tell you? I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Help! Somebody help me. What was I saying just before this?
Management.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so the tutti players got together and decided to form a committee, a members committee, where they could go to the union with what they thought they needed in the new contract. And they basically were the voice of the orchestra, because they were the majority of the orchestra. Probably 80% of the orchestra were the tutti players. Herseth was not a tutti player. So they had the first vote by all the members in the orchestra. And the personnel manager was John Weicker. He had been previously concertmaster. Now he's principal second. He's also the conductor of Civic. He was very close friends with Herseth. They came to each other and they said, listen, I'll nominate you, you nominate me, and we'll get on that committee and put out fires. They were management. Well, Weicker was not allowed. He was taken off the list because he was management. And you can't have management in the labor force as a voice. So they voted. Rudy Nashin, his second trumpet player, got 81 votes. Herseth got 3. That was the beginning of Rudy Nashin getting moved down to fourth trumpet. How do you like that? So many stories, and you can take any orchestra from that period of time, and there'll be similar stories in every section. And it's sort of sad. And so yesterday we had a meeting with the 4 trumpets that are now at Music Academy of the West. We chose them along with Paul Merkello. And we had a little meeting and talked about how things used to be. And this is a good opportunity that when you have a little sectional or you're playing in the orchestra, that before you say something to this person down here or that person down there or somebody that's arrogant, and that's how that started this whole conversation you asked about what do I do to deal with arrogance. It's difficult because most people, if they're older or if they're first chair, it's built in arrogance. What do? Well, we told this section of 4 trumpets, this is your chance before you say anything at all. Say it to yourself and see if it's the way you would like it said. It's the golden rule. What's the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So you're really careful. You don't say, hey, Bill, that is so sharp. What's the matter with you? When it turns out, of course, that guy was flat, right? Majority rules with pitch. So it's not one dude that got his tuner out that morning and checked all his notes or her notes. It's what's the orchestra playing. If they all go sharp, you better go sharp. Or you're going to be flat. That's the way it works. So it's a wonderful team. It's a big family playing in an orchestra. Now, with those stories, how many people would like to be in an orchestra someday? Good, because it's the greatest music in the world. I personally love opera because there's so much even more going. There's staging and costumes, and they're like any opera, like a soap opera almost. The stories are unbelievable. Great conductors, great singers. I love it. I love it. But it's a big family, and you have to find ways to deal with all those kinds of problems. The best way is to be just a good person. Think about everybody else around you. So if you're going to be first trumpet, your goal is to play your part as well as possible. Be predictable, consistent. Don't one day decide to articulate just without telling anybody. Be consistent. Number 3, support your section. Bring out the best in them. Encourage them. Appreciate them constantly. Everything you can do. That's how you lead. If you're going to use a different mute than you used yesterday, show them. Before the rehearsal starts, don't play games. Herseth used to play games. The last second he'd pick up, he'd have 4 mutes there, and we'd rehearse with one, and what? I could not understand him for his career and how great he was, because he was. Nobody has touched him. He was a phenomenal player, but some of the things he did they're sad. And hopefully it doesn't exist anymore. I don't know of any orchestras that are like that, but it's important that you know a little history. And we're all people, we're insecure. Musicians are insecure. We like somebody to say, there, George, I really appreciated you playing with me today. You made me sound better than I am. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and playing together. That's how you play first trumpet. Or you lean over and say, George, play a little louder. I'd like to tune to you. We're close enough. Those kinds of things build a really strong relationship. You don't have to go to dinner. I don't have to agree with that he's Muslim. You're not, are you? No. Or you like spinach? I don't care if you like spinach or liver. I don't like those things. It doesn't matter, right? Those things don't matter at all. But we have to come to agreement when we're sitting down in an orchestra. And that's your job. That's what you have to do. See you later. I come back later tonight sometime.